Okay, so to show this off in terms of the basic functions to start with, I've loaded up the Arturia acid bassline. So it's a mono synth, which is typically how I'd use an arpeggiator to generate something. Obviously, this, by the way, this plugin has its own sequencer and ARP functions. No reason you can't use both, combine them for really crazy stuff. But for now, we're just going to select external, which means that the acid plugin itself isn't generating its own sequences. That's all going to come from Step Arp. And I have MIDI monitor here because just makes it a bit easier to see what's going on, especially once we get a bit wackier. So just to start with, I'm going to hold down, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can hit hold on your controller keyboard if you have that sort of a function, or you can hit this hold there so that your hands are free to mess with stuff. Let me just turn the volume down a little bit a second. Now, first thing to look at is the actual steps. So, you know, choosing to only activate certain steps in the 16-step loop, and by the way, we can of course change the length of that. We can create any length within that to get some interesting kind of polyrhythmic effect, bass lines or melodies that'll be working against whatever else is going on in our project. Let's just go back to 16 for now, and we can randomize velocity, which will obviously have an impact if you've got a velocity sensitive synthesizer coming after on the nature of the sound. We can change up length, and by the way, this scale slider here, bear in mind, is deciding how much randomization happens. So you can set, I just want a bit of randomization across. You see the variations are kind of close together between the different steps, or you can go for it, you go wild, spread this right along the length of the bar, and you get these much deeper degrees of variation. And that's the same for all these lanes. So that's velocity, that's length. We could switch back, and of course you can go in and manually adjust. That's the beauty of it. You can set up the randomization to get you a starting point. You can go in and randomize everything. Chances, by the way, so velocity and length are like the core parameters you're affecting in the sequence. You've already set the pitch, of course, because you've played a note or a chord, which we've got on hold, so that's going around. And at any point you can override that. If I hold down now a new chord, so that's just changed the notes that are playing. So that's the thing to remember. The step sequencer isn't generating the notes, remember, it's just affecting the pattern that those notes are being played in. Primarily through order, up, down. We'll come back to this keyboard icon in a minute, and randomized note order. Just going to hit the C minor chord again, and you can see all this working in the MIDI monitor. Alright, now getting to these more advanced, if you like, parameters, chants, you have to switch these on for them to become active. So if I switch in chants, and then again if I do some randomization, this is now giving each step a probability that it will strike, basically. So even though you can see some of these are lit up at the bottom, as in we've activated the steps, chance is now affecting that decision each time it goes round and varying the pattern every time, essentially. You can have that on for our original pattern, which we're manually altering with the boxes at the bottom. Put it back on, and chant is back in the game. Ratcheting is an interesting one because it's basically messing with the timing, whereby if everything is at its max, it's basically adding more steps in between the steps we can see, which is, again, you might use this more for percussive effect, you know, and not to have it on every note, but just occasional notes. You might have maybe a couple of ratchets at the end. And what's interesting is with the ratcheting is if you take it below the line into negative values, you're expanding the clock division, so you're effectively kind of changing the actual timings of the notes, making them longer relative to the other notes, and that can get quite wacky and wild quite quickly. If you randomize them, you get, you know, sort of times being stretched faster, slower through this 16 step sequence. And by the way, again, for every step you can go in and change them, and when you do that, edit step by step manually, this readout at the top here is showing you which step you're on, which one you're affecting, step 12 or step 14, and the exact value of that parameter change. So here you go, step 16, clock division 0.25. So it's trying to play a whole bunch of notes in that tiny little 16th note, effectively. Let's turn that off a minute. And then Transpose is a really interesting one. I like this a lot, actually. So we've got this C minor, you see in the MIDI monitor. Got this C minor pattern going. And if we just do a bit of... sorry, actually you have to turn it on before you can randomize it. So it's just default, nothing happening. So what it's doing is it's adding transposition to each step. Go a bit more extreme, you'll hear the effect more. So it's taking my original C minor notes, and as you can see in the MIDI monitor, it's adding a bunch of other stuff. Now, there's nothing to stop it going out of scale. So you can see, for instance, it's playing a B natural, because one of these steps is telling it to. And again, you can go in and manually alter these if you wanted. And by the way, this is a good point to show the octaves. I mean, just increase the spread right across the keyboard. Now, there's a really simple way to get this back in key with Live 12's project scale setting up at the top. Let's just click this button so it's locked to the project scale, which is back in C minor. So now what it's doing is it's forcing, with all these alterations, it's forcing them back into key. Now, what's interesting about this, if we just turn it off, well, I think it's best used probably sparingly, you know, a bit of experimentation, but then you have let's say you have a sequence running like this that you've set up, the bass sequence, and then you go into Transpose, and maybe you just turn that on and off every few bars or something for a bit of variation, or as a sort of turnaround at the end of a section. And now, just turn that off a second. You may have noticed while this sequence has been playing that on the Acid plugin, cutoff setting has kind of been moving around a lot. And that modulation is actually coming from the arpeggiator. I'll turn it off and start from scratch. So scrub those all out. And all you do is map it. If you're used to Max4Live or some of the other MIDI and audio tools that come with Ableton, LFOs, etc., and modulations, you'll see these little map buttons. And when you click them, they flash, and you go somewhere, and you can choose a parameter to map. So you'll see I've just set up cutoff here on the Acid plugin. So I've just told here, if you go back to the Step Arp, you can see that now reads cutoff. I've just told it that whatever I do in this pattern, that, and you can control the amount of modulation here, that is going to work on, like me going in with the mouse and twisting it, it's going to work on that. So let's just play again a C minor. As soon as the sequence starts, look at that cutoff knob going crazy. Loves it. I absolutely love that feature. There are loads of arpeggiators and sequencers that can do all sorts of fancy tricks in Max4Live and in the hardware realm and in Eurorack. A lot of people wonder why this wasn't available as a device before in Ableton. I think of the new sequencer pack they've launched is probably my favourite because it's so simple, but you can do so much with it. And it's a new way to mess around with modulating parameters like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of this. And just one final thing, because what we haven't touched on, and the reason in another track here, I've actually loaded up a piano sound. So I'm just going to turn off the bass track. We're going to come in here now for a reason, because okay, there's a bunch of stuff I just set up earlier. If I just get that to hold. Now you're hearing Arturia's Augmented grand piano. I think and the effect of just some velocity and length variation generated by this Step Arp is really, really pleasing. And this is maybe good time to show you the ratchet effect. With this sound, you can really hear the difference it makes to the timing. This is on, and this is off. There is, of course, the regular swing you can apply. I say regular swing, I mean, swing you would expect to find, which in a way has a sort of, a more fixed and controlled way of doing similar thing, of applying really strange or offbeat feel to a rhythm. But yeah, Ratchet does it much more weirdly. But good for experimentation though. It's rather than having a set swing for every for the whole pattern, it's kind of pulling and pushing every single step that's active. Like the pianist is a bit drunk. Anyway, turn that off for now. Go back to our regular sequence. Oh yeah, and the main reason I wanted to, so we've looked at how the note order can be varied up, down, random, and follow. And by the way, as it says in the info, follow is sorting the notes within an octave according to the current octave pattern. Let's give that a go. Hang on. If I go to 5 octaves, it's sort of extreme, so you can see. Rather than going up and down octave 1, up and down octave 2, up and down octave 3, it's going up all the way from octave 1 to 3, all the way down from octave 3 to 1. Etc. when it's up down mode. Right, okay, I'm glad I made sense of that for myself, if no one else. I hope you understood. Alright, let's just stop that a second. We have a piano which is polyphonic, which we need to show this chord arpeggiator. So as you can see, it's simply repeating the chords. Now, so yeah, you can start creating little comping rhythms, or you know, if you made it more sparse, little, and had a synth, maybe more like stabs. There you go. So I think we've covered all the main features there. But yeah, it's a really impressive little device.